Boulder, Colorado, a picturesque town cradled by the Rockies. White-capped roofs shimmered under a pale December sun. It was the day after Christmas, 1996. The kind of morning meant for leftover pie and sleepy joy. But at 755 15th Street, inside a Tudor-style house with twinkling lights still glowing, something had gone terribly wrong. A 6-year-old girl named JonBenét Ramsey, tiny, blonde, a child beauty queen adored by the cameras, was found dead in the basement of her family's home. The call to police came just before 6 a.m. A ransom note had been discovered hours earlier. Her mother, Patsy Ramsey, had made the frantic 911 call. Her father, John, would later be the one to find her body. In the decades since, the name JonBenét Ramsey has come to haunt American true crime like few others. Her case is no longer just a case. It's an icon of mystery, a symbol of shattered innocence, and a question we've never been able to answer. Today, we're revisiting this story with a fresh lens. Not to sensationalize, not to dramatize, but to unpack what we know and what we now believe we know about one of the most confounding unsolved murders in modern history. Theories have evolved. Evidence has been reevaluated. New technologies, new interpretations, and new voices are reshaping how we think about what really happened that winter morning. So let's begin, not with headlines, but with what was found and what wasn't. December 26th, 1996. The Ramseys' house on 15th Street stood quiet in the pre-dawn dark. Patsy Ramsey, dressed in the same clothes she wore the night before, descended the curved staircase of their home. At the bottom, she noticed something odd, 3 pages laid out on the spiral stairs. She picked them up. A ransom note. It was long, unusually long, 2.5 pages handwritten. It claimed that a small foreign faction had taken their daughter and demanded $118,000 for her return, a strangely specific figure, nearly identical to John Ramsey's holiday bonus. At 5:52 a.m., Patsy dialed 911. Her voice was panicked. "We have a kidnapping," she told the dispatcher. "Hurry, please." Within minutes, officers arrived. The Ramseys' friends soon followed. The house, meant to be a sealed crime scene, quickly filled with people. Police found no signs of forced entry. The family's valuables were untouched. There was no sign JonBenét had been removed from the house. The ransom note suggested waiting for a phone call with instructions. That call never came. Hours passed. At around 1 p.m., Detective Linda Arndt, the lone officer left to manage the scene, suggested John Ramsey take a fresh look around the house. Within minutes, he emerged from the basement carrying JonBenét's body in his arms. She had been hidden behind a latched door in a little-used basement room. She was wrapped in a white blanket. A cord was tied around her neck and wrists. Her mouth had been covered with duct tape. There was a garrote fashioned from a broken paintbrush handle around her neck. John placed her on the floor. Patsy screamed. Detectives attempted CPR, but it was far too late. In those first critical hours, key evidence was disturbed, and the scene, chaotic and crowded, became compromised. Mistakes that would haunt this case had already been made. In the days following JonBenét's death, the focus shifted quickly from the tragedy itself to the people inside the house that night. John Ramsey, a successful businessman, Patsy, a former beauty queen, and their 9-year-old son, Burke. According to their statements, the evening of December 25th was normal. They attended a Christmas party with family friends. JonBenét had received a bike. She was excited, tired. The Ramseys said she was put to bed around 9 p.m. The next morning, Patsy claimed she woke early to prepare for a trip to Michigan. That's when she discovered the ransom note. But investigators began to question the family's timeline almost immediately. For one, there were no fingerprints on the note, except for Patsy's and the police. No smudges from tears or urgency. No sign that it had been hastily grabbed. Then, there was the calm with which John Ramsey conducted himself after JonBenét's body was found. To some, he appeared controlled, too composed. Burke, meanwhile, was reported to be asleep throughout the entire ordeal. Through the screaming, through the search, through the discovery of his sister's body just floors below. Critics of the family's version of events also pointed to inconsistencies. Whether the basement had been searched before, who touched what, when exactly Patsy made the 911 call. But others pointed out these were people in shock. Their 6-year-old daughter had just been found dead in their home. Trauma, confusion, grief, they don't always follow logical patterns. Despite this, the family was never fully cleared in the public eye. Suspicion lingered. Investigators didn't help that perception. Early leaks to the media emphasized behavioral red flags, odd phrases in the 911 call, and what some called a staged crime scene. But was it really suspicious? Or simply misunderstood? The ransom note found in the Ramsey home remains one of the most baffling pieces of evidence in the case. It was discovered early on the morning of December 26th, placed on a back stairway inside the home, far from the front door or any expected path of an intruder. The note was handwritten in pen on 3 pages torn from a notepad that was already in the house. Police later confirmed that the pad and pen both belonged to the Ramseys. Its tone was strange. The note began, "Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully." It claimed that JonBenét had been taken by a group calling itself a small foreign faction. The author demanded exactly $118,000 in exchange for JonBenét's safe return, the same amount John had received as a Christmas bonus. The note was excessively long for a ransom letter, stretching nearly 400 words. Most such notes are brief, just a few lines. But this one was filled with unusual phrases and references. Phrases like, "Use that good Southern common sense of yours, and she dies, she dies." It even echoed lines from popular action movies like Speed and Dirty Harry. Forensic linguists, handwriting experts, and criminal profilers would study the note for years. The handwriting did not match John's, and Patsy's was inconclusive, though some believed it was suspiciously close. Patsy Ramsey submitted to multiple handwriting tests, over and over, but was never definitively matched to the note. Some theorized that the note was written after JonBenét's death, staged to redirect attention. Others believed it was written in advance, or that the killer took their time in the house. A practice draft was reportedly found in the same notepad. The FBI and many seasoned investigators viewed the note as staged, a decoy. It was just too long, too odd, and too embedded with clues that led nowhere. No legitimate kidnapper would leave something so wordy on site and then fail to follow up. Yet despite years of analysis, the note has never led to an arrest. Its author remains unidentified, and whether it was written by someone inside the house or an intruder is still debated today. When the first officers arrived at the Ramsey residence, they were walking into a scene no one expected, a child missing from an upscale home in one of Colorado's safest neighborhoods. Officer Rick French performed a quick sweep of the house, checking windows and doors. He opened the basement door, but didn't go all the way inside. At the time, JonBenét was still believed to be kidnapped. There was no reason, he thought, to suspect otherwise. But what came next set the tone for what many would call one of the most mishandled crime scenes in American history. The house was not immediately sealed. Friends of the Ramseys arrived, bringing comfort but also contamination. They moved through rooms, cleaned up dishes, even tidied the kitchen. Patsy was allowed to roam. John made calls. People moved freely, touching surfaces, possibly altering evidence without knowing it. Detectives also failed to isolate the family for formal interviews. Burke, then just 9, was taken to a friend's house before he could be thoroughly questioned. He wasn't interviewed by police until days later. Hours passed. The FBI was reportedly ready to assist, but was turned away. The local police, Boulder PD, maintained control. They were a small department, unequipped for this level of complexity or media attention. By 1 p.m., when John Ramsey found JonBenét's body, the case shifted from a potential kidnapping to a homicide. But instead of preserving the location, John picked her up and carried her upstairs, disturbing the scene. He later said it was instinct, a father finding his daughter. But in that moment, any forensic context was lost. The coroner wasn't called until hours later. The autopsy wasn't performed until the next day. And by then, the damage had been done. Even the handling of evidence, such as the ransom note, lacked proper chain of custody discipline. Detectives folded it, passed it around. In retrospect, every early decision became a regret. Many believe that if the house had been locked down from the beginning, if the basement had been searched thoroughly, and if the Ramseys had been treated as potential suspects or protected witnesses rather than grieving parents, the case might look very different today. Instead, speculation filled the void that proper investigation left behind. From the start, the question lingered. If no intruder was found, could someone inside the house be responsible? Early suspicions settled on the Ramseys themselves, John, Patsy, and even Burke. These suspicions weren't just fueled by the lack of forced entry or the bizarre ransom note. They were fed by inconsistencies, emotions, or the perceived lack of them, and the psychology of grief under a microscope. The theory against John Ramsey suggested that he may have lashed out in a moment of anger or accidentally harmed JonBenét during the night. Some pointed to his behavior the following day, his calm demeanor, the fact that he carried his daughter's body from the basement as if he already knew where she was. Critics noted his background in technology and defense contracting, connecting it, however loosely, to the language in the ransom note. But there was no physical evidence tying him to the crime, no signs of recent injuries, and no motive ever firmly established. Patsy Ramsey, on the other hand, was seen by some as a more plausible suspect. The note was written on her notepad, in handwriting that some experts believed loosely resembled hers. The content of the note, with its dramatic tone and peculiar references, seemed theatrical, possibly too much so. It also contained misspellings and odd phrasing that, according to some, aligned with her style of speaking. The theory suggested that JonBenét may have wet the bed and that Patsy, in a moment of frustration, accidentally caused her death and staged the scene to appear as an abduction. Supporters of this theory often pointed to the use of Patsy's paintbrush in the construction of the garrote. But again, these were circumstantial clues, not proof. Then there was Burke Ramsey, only 9 years old at the time. For years, he was shielded from public scrutiny due to his age. But in 2016, a CBS documentary speculated that he may have struck JonBenét during a sibling dispute, possibly using a flashlight, and that the parents staged the crime scene to protect him. Burke later sued CBS for defamation and reached a settlement. The theory itself, while popular in some circles, was built on behavioral analysis and conjecture, not physical evidence. Forensic findings have also challenged these theories. The autopsy revealed head trauma and signs of strangulation. Some experts argued that the head injury occurred first, followed by the garrote application, implying staging. Others believed the strangulation was the fatal blow. Crucially, DNA recovered from JonBenét's clothing and undergarments did not match anyone in the Ramsey family. This was key in their legal exoneration. In 2008, the Boulder District Attorney formally cleared the Ramseys based on that DNA. Still, for many, questions linger, because even if they weren't responsible, they were the only ones inside the house. As suspicion lingered over the Ramsey family, others looked beyond the household walls. Could an intruder have entered the home that night, unnoticed, and committed the crime? There was evidence that supported the possibility. In the basement where JonBenét's body was found, investigators discovered an open window. It was a small, grated casement-style window, broken previously by John Ramsey to access the home when he was locked out. The window had a dirt smudge and what appeared to be a partial footprint on a suitcase just beneath it. That suitcase belonged to the Ramseys, but was oddly placed. It wasn't normally stored under the window. Some speculated that an intruder used it as a stepping aid, entering or exiting through the window. Spider webs in the corner were found intact, leading others to doubt any recent passage. But the window itself remained a lingering question. More compelling was the unidentified male DNA found on JonBenét's clothing, specifically her underwear and the waistband of her leggings. That DNA profile has never matched John, Burke, or any other known family member. The sample was tested repeatedly over the years, and in 2008, Advancements in forensic science led the Boulder District Attorney's Office to formally exonerate the Ramsey family based on that finding. They argued the DNA likely belonged to the killer. Then there was the unusual nature of the crime scene. The garrote, fashioned from one of Patsy's paintbrushes, was complex, suggesting a level of premeditation or at least a very specific method of killing. To some, it felt too sophisticated for a domestic dispute gone wrong. Supporters of the intruder theory also pointed to past incidents. A neighborhood housekeeper reported seeing strange men casing the Ramsey home in the weeks prior. Another family acquaintance, Bill McReynolds, had played Santa Claus at a party JonBenét attended and was subject to intense public scrutiny, though never charged. There were also registered sex offenders living nearby. Some had histories of breaking and entering, yet none matched the DNA. Critics of the intruder theory argue it would be incredibly risky. Entering a large house on a holiday night, navigating unfamiliar rooms, writing a long ransom note inside the home, and staying undetected while the family slept. That level of confidence, or carelessness, seemed improbable to many investigators. But no fingerprints were found on the note. No definitive sign of forced entry elsewhere. And the DNA, once again, didn't belong to the family. If an intruder committed the crime, they left almost no trace of themselves, except, perhaps, for the most confounding clue of all. When JonBenét Ramsey was murdered in 1996, DNA testing was still in its adolescence. Techniques were labor-intensive, expensive, and far less sensitive than they are today. Small or degraded samples often went unanalyzed. Contamination risks were high. At the time, police collected fibers, hairs, blood samples, and other biological evidence from the Ramsey home. But it wasn't until years later that the full potential of those samples began to emerge. In 2008, scientists working with new touch DNA technology, a method allowing analysis of trace skin cells left behind by mere contact, identified an unknown male DNA profile on JonBenét's underwear and long johns. It didn't match any Ramsey family member. It didn't match law enforcement. It didn't match anyone in the existing criminal databases. Based on this discovery, Boulder District Attorney Mary Lacey made a bold move. She issued a formal apology to the Ramseys and cleared them of involvement. The Boulder District Attorney's Office does not consider any member of the Ramsey family a suspect, she wrote. But not everyone agreed. Some forensic experts argued that trace DNA found on clothing, particularly children's clothing, could be transferred inadvertently during manufacturing, shipping, or even from handlers in stores. Others insisted the presence of that DNA on 2 articles of intimate apparel made transfer less likely and more indicative of direct contact. As DNA science has advanced, so has public access to genealogy tools. Investigative genetic genealogy, the same method that helped capture the Golden State Killer in 2018, has been proposed as a path forward in JonBenét's case. In late 2021, police confirmed that they were working with state and federal agencies to review evidence with new DNA technology. Though they stopped short of providing details, the renewed interest signaled movement, perhaps the most hope the case had seen in years. Still, major obstacles remain. Some of the original evidence may have degraded. Chain of custody issues linger, and the touch DNA samples may not be viable enough for genealogical tracing. But in a case frozen in time for more than 2 decades, technology offers something that had been missing for years: forward momentum. From the moment JonBenét's face appeared on television screens, the case was no longer just a criminal investigation. It became a media spectacle. JonBenét wasn't just a child. She was a child beauty queen. Pageant footage showing her in glittering gowns and makeup played endlessly on national TV. The contrast between her stage persona and the tragedy of her death captivated the public and also blurred the boundaries between information and exploitation. News vans lined up in front of the Ramsey home for weeks. Local papers published leaks. National tabloids ran daily headlines filled with speculation. The Ramseys' every move was analyzed, dissected, and judged. Their refusal to sit for formal police interviews early in the investigation only fueled suspicion. Even a ransom note became tabloid fodder. Photocopied and printed in full, it was picked apart by amateur sleuths and talk show panels alike. A family in mourning quickly became a family on trial, convicted in the court of public opinion. Misinformation spread easily. Misquoted autopsy findings, rumors of abuse, unfounded accusations, all found their way into headlines. Some media outlets suggested a cover-up. Others hinted at occult theories or linked the case to unrelated crimes. The real investigation was often drowned out by noise. In the years that followed, books were written, documentaries produced, and pseudo-experts trotted out for every anniversary. Many of them offered theories based more on narrative appeal than evidence. The line between journalism and entertainment blurred. The 2016 CBS documentary, which suggested Burke Ramsey might be the killer, prompted a $750 million defamation lawsuit. That case was later settled privately, but it underscored a larger issue. The media's reach often outpaced its responsibility. As digital platforms emerged, forums like Web Sleuths and Reddit reignited interest in the case. Thousands of posts debated everything from floor plans to fiber analysis. While some users contributed useful insights, others amplified baseless claims, giving rise to an entire subculture of unsolved crime fandom. For the investigators still working the case, and for JonBenét's remaining family, this onslaught of speculation has complicated more than just perception. It's distorted the very foundation of what the public believes about the case. In the absence of answers, many chose the loudest narrative. And for a long time, that narrative wasn't based on fact. For many cold cases, the passing of years means quiet closure, files stored in archives, memories fading. But JonBenét Ramsey's case never faded. It remained active, persistent, and painfully public. Over the years, dozens of detectives, forensic analysts, and private investigators have combed through the evidence again and again. Some were officially assigned. Others joined out of fascination or moral conviction. Most left without answers. Retired FBI profiler John Douglas, known for developing criminal profiling at the Bureau, studied the case and leaned toward the intruder theory. Others, like retired Colorado detective Lou Smith, brought in as an independent voice, became fierce advocates for that view. Smith's presentation of intruder-related evidence remains one of the most comprehensive defenses against the theory of family involvement. After his death, Smith's family continued his work. They released hours of interviews, theories, and investigative notes, reigniting public discussion and shining light on avenues the original team may have overlooked. In 2021, the Boulder Police Department issued a statement confirming they had analyzed over 1,500 pieces of evidence and received more than 21,000 tips. They also confirmed their collaboration with private DNA labs and federal agencies to explore new testing technologies. Despite this, no charges have ever been filed. No named suspect has emerged. The killer remains officially unknown. The Ramseys maintained their innocence until the end. Patsy Ramsey died of ovarian cancer in 2006. She was buried beside JonBenét. John Ramsey has spoken occasionally, calling for DNA testing and transparency from Boulder police. Burke, who rarely speaks publicly, participated in an interview with DR. Phil in 2016, one of the most discussed media appearances related to the case. And still, every December, the case re-enters public memory. Candlelight vigils, interviews, documentaries. Not because of renewed leads, but because of the void it left behind. A case with so many theories. And yet, still no resolution. A quarter century has passed since JonBenét Ramsey's death. And yet, the case continues to evolve. Not because of new evidence, but because of new ways to interpret what we already have. In the 2020s, advancements in digital forensics and crowdsourced investigation have given rise to renewed interest. Tools that didn't exist in 1996, like facial recognition, geolocation metadata, and genealogical triangulation, have opened up new possibilities for solving old crimes. Some researchers have reanalyzed a ransom note using AI language models, comparing syntax and phrasing to thousands of public documents. The results are still inconclusive, but they highlight how technology is beginning to influence even the linguistic side of criminal investigations. Others have focused on behavioral data. Audio analysts revisited the 911 call made by Patsy Ramsey, applying modern software to enhance and isolate background noise. Some claimed they could hear Burke's voice, contradicting the narrative that he was asleep. Others argued the results were too ambiguous to be definitive. In 2022, a coalition of independent sleuths, many with backgrounds in criminology, tech, and law, proposed a new intruder timeline based on electricity usage data, neighborhood camera placements, and revised entry paths. While compelling, their findings haven't led to official action. The Boulder police, for their part, maintain that the case is open. They continue to test items for DNA using newer methods like next-generation sequencing, NGS, which can generate usable profiles from degraded or low-quantity samples. Some believe the original DNA found on JonBenét's clothing could finally be matched to a relative of the killer using genealogical databases. Yet this kind of testing requires permissions and privacy oversight. Not every company or jurisdiction is aligned on how or when to allow it. The bureaucratic hurdles remain significant. Beyond tech, new psychological analyses have also entered the conversation. Some experts propose the killer may have been someone known to the family, but not close, a delivery worker, contractor, or casual acquaintance who entered the house during the holidays when security was loose and routines were disrupted. These theories push against the binary of family or intruder, suggesting a more complex scenario, someone with partial access, a passing familiarity, and a dark opportunity. Whether any of these avenues will yield a resolution is unknown, but they reflect something important. The case may be cold, but it isn't static. And perhaps, somewhere in the evolving matrix of data, lies a clue we've seen before but never understood. Not yet. The JonBenét Ramsey case is more than a mystery. It's a mirror, one that reflects how we respond to tragedy, how we hunger for answers, and how we sometimes lose sight of truth in pursuit of closure. 28 years have passed. There's no killer behind bars. No charges filed. Just a cold file in Boulder. A little girl in a white pageant dress, frozen in America's memory. Yet the case lives on, through evidence still tested, theories still evolving, and voices still asking, what really happened? For every new documentary, every data point, every re-examined clue, one fact remains unchanged. JonBenét Patricia Ramsey was 6 years old. She was a daughter, a sister, a child full of life, whose story became a labyrinth of speculation. We may never know what really happened that night, but someone does. And perhaps, someday, that silence will break. So what do you think of today's video? Do you have something you want us to feature next? Tell us in the comments. It will also mean a lot to us if you like and subscribe. Close the book if you can. This is Black Chapter.